Welcome back to the PI show. Before the break we were talking about asbestos related matters and how these claims at the moment seem to be increasing gradually over a period of time, and as you said before the break, I think any queries, you've got to see a lawyer very, very quickly really to get a claim up and running. Now the other sort of areas of injuries that happen to people that we're going to discuss tonight are injuries for people who work for the Commonwealth Government and some of the Commonwealth Government instrumentalities. In Victoria they've got a whole separate scheme which is quite different to work cover. So if you're working for Australia Post and Telstra, they're probably the two biggest Commonwealth Government or covered by the Commonwealth scheme, if you like.
Better known as Comcare.
It's known as Comcare. There's an Act of Parliament that came into effect on the 1st of December 1988 that covers people working for
The Commonwealth.
Yeah, the Commonwealth departments, plus some of these sort of old, people might remember the PMG, as I do, going back many years.
I remember the PMG, Harry.
And so people who work for Telstra and for Australia Post are covered by Comcare.
Defence industries.
Interestingly enough, people like the Federal Police, people who work for the CSIRO, quite a diverse range of people.
National Australia Bank, I think, also Comcare these days.
Yeah, we'll come to that, but people who work in quite a diverse range of Commonwealth Government bodies and instrumentalities, plus the Commonwealth itself, they're covered by a separate scheme. Now, the Commonwealth scheme came into effect in '88. Someone's injured. How generous is it? How tough is it? What happens?
I don't particularly like it. Look, you've got your statutory entitlements, which is your weekly benefits and also reasonable medical and like expenses. And, you know, generally people look at what can they get as a lump sum. Now, the thing is, you've got impairment benefits under sections 24 and 27. That picks up injuries.
So if you have a permanent injury,
yeah,
you work, let's say for Australia Post, you're working in a mail sorting room, you slip, you fall, you trip, you injure yourself, an arm and a leg, you've got, you can claim lump sum benefits.
As a no-fault benefit.
As a no-fault benefit.
And then once they assess you, and if you've got more than 10%, you can elect to sue for common law. But the problem with common law is what, Harry? What do you say the problem is?
Well, the problem with common law under Comcare legislation is the benefit is very, very low. The Commonwealth Government in 1988, I think, set the limit for pain and suffering at $110,000.
And not subject to indexation.
It hasn't moved 1 cent since 1988. So under Victorian law, if you're injured in a workplace in Victoria, you can sue for up to about $480,000 for pain and suffering. That's the maximum.
I think it's a bit less than that. I'm not. Yeah.
But that's the maximum. It's over $400,000. Under the Commonwealth legislation, it's $110,000 for common law.
So you generally tell your client your preference is not to go for common law.
So I
and
think
it's only for pain and suffering. You can't sue for loss of income.
Loss of income.
No.
That's covered by your weekly payments.
That's right.
But say you're working for Australia Post, you're driving a car, delivering things, or on a motorbike delivering letters, and you're hit by a car. What happens then?
Well, your no-fault benefits are picked up under the Comcare system. However, if you want to sue someone, you can go under the Transport Accident Act. If someone else is at fault, you can sue the other person.
The other person who's at fault.
Yeah.
You're driving a motorbike delivering post, and someone hits you. So you can sue the...
You sue the third party, which means that you're picked up by the Transport Accident Act, which is good. The benefits under that are quite generous compared to Comcare. But the only thing you've got to bear in mind is that any money received from Comcare will have to be repaid. But that doesn't matter because a lot of these car accident claims, especially if you come off motorbikes, are pretty significant injuries. So they're good claims. They're, you know, the benefit to the injured person is pretty high.
So they still retain their Commonwealth, their common law rights, which we think are important.
Yes.
And even though they're working for Australia Post,
yes,
they can still they're not excluded or precluded or unable to sue at
In
common
fact,
law.
the Australia Post workers are probably at an advantage over most other Commonwealth employees because in a lot of their cases, especially the drivers, they get injured on the road. And if someone else is at fault, they can sue them. But albeit they have to repay some benefits received from ComCare.
So they receive the weekly payments, but they've got to repay those.
They've still got the generous TAC entitlements that they can sue
So let's say someone's working for Centrelink, they go on a break during lunch, they're walking across the road, they're hit by a car. What's the situation there?
You'd get your no-fault benefits from the Commonwealth scheme, ComCare.
So the weekly payments?
Yes.
And your medical expenses?
Yes.
Okay.
And then you can sue the driver if you can prove the driver's at fault. And usually in pedestrian cases, you're going to be able to prove some fault on the driver.
The motor car is a dangerous weapon.
That's right. Manly and Alexander, they said that.
And the courts generally say if you're driving a dangerous weapon as a motor car, you've got to be alert at all times.
You've got to be diligent at all times.
So even if a pedestrian runs across the road, you've still got to be diligent and watching out for those people. So the Commonwealth scheme, unfortunately, in my view, if you're injured within Australia Post in a mailroom, I think your rights aren't as generous as if you're injured in a mailroom working for a different company that isn't covered by ComCare.
No, I agree with that, Harry.
That's the reality.
As a rule, you'd like to, when you talk about rights and entitlements, you generally like to get the injured person as much as possible to cover their future needs in terms of, give them a bit of security in terms of financially.
Well, if they've lost money, you just aren't properly compensated under
the Commonwealth scheme.
Under the Commonwealth scheme. So
and this is the thing you keep bringing up about preserving people's common law rights, because there's been a lot of talk about no-fault systems and things like this, and that's
Tony, it doesn't work. It doesn't work. That's my view. But
I agree.
A lot of public servants and people who work, insurers would like no-fault schemes, but my view, it just doesn't work.
No, look, I agree with that. I think it's best to give the person a lump sum and then see if they can get on with their life in some shape or form.
But it's the fairest way
of
compensating people for
Mind you, if
injuries.
they get a lump sum, they generally put it back in the community anyway, the economy, they spend it on a house or something.
Well,
Who knows?
It's their own money, but
it's
the fairest way of compensating people who are injured, and we love the common law.
But the message, Harry, as usual, if you're injured in a Commonwealth scenario or in a car accident as a driver, Australia Post, get legal advice. Because there's time limits on these claims too. You've got to be careful. You just can't assume that you can bring a claim at any time. Every scheme, no matter what it is, has got a time limit generally attached to it.
Okay. The other thing about ComCare, which, or if you're working for a Commonwealth government bodies, sometimes is that you've got possible superannuation entitlements.
Yeah, they can be quite generous.
So we'll come back to superannuation and what you can claim after the break.